Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, we've been studying the Mula Pariyaya Sutta, the discourse on the root of all things, the exposition of the root of all things. This is Sutta number 1 in the Majjhima Nikaya. And last time I went through all of the 24 bases of conceiving in the section on the ordinary person or the worldling. And so now we come to the section on what is called the Seka in Pali, the person who is the Seka. This is what is translated here as the disciple in higher training. I'll write the Pali word. Pali word is very simple. The Pali word Seka is based on the verb sikati, which means to train or to learn, to practice. So this is the trainee, the learner, the practitioner. But this word is used with a somewhat technical sense to mean the disciple who has entered upon the fixed, irreversible course to liberation. It's not just any disciple who undertakes the training, but one who has already made the first breakthrough of realization. And by making that first breakthrough of realization, the disciple has reached a point where he or she is assured of reaching final liberation. Such a disciple can never fall away from the path, can never fall back again to the level of an ordinary person or a worldling. But now this person has, you could say, has fallen into the stream of the path. It's a mixture of metaphors. Fallen into the stream of the training. And so now the training or the current of the path is going to carry this person to final liberation. Of course, the person has to practice. It doesn't happen automatically. But final liberation is definitely assured because this person has seen the truth of the Dhamma. And so that this person can never lose that vision of the Dhamma. And by gaining that definite right view, definite true understanding of the Dhamma, now this person becomes endowed with the ability to cultivate and develop all the other factors of the Noble Eightfold Path to the point that they will culminate in final knowledge, correct final knowledge of the Dhamma, and full liberation. in terms of the 4 stages of liberation, the Seika comprises the 3 lower stages. That is, the stream enterer, Sotapanna, the once returner, the one who will come back to this world one more time and then make an end to samsaric suffering, and the non-returner, that is, the person who will never return to this sensuous world, but who will take rebirth in one of the higher realms, the Brahma realms, or fine material realms, and attain final liberation there. Okay, so here we have a certain standard description of the trainee. Now it's to be noticed in this particular schematism we have here in this sutta, we have a description of the uninstructed, ordinary person who doesn't have any regard for the noble ones. How does it go? Who has no regard for noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma and so on. And then we come to the one who is the disciple in higher training, and this is the one who's definitely on the path. And so what's missing is somebody who is in the intermediate stage. And this would be described as a person who is, there's a technical term which is used for this, comes in the commentaries, not in the suttas. It's called the Kalyana Putujana, which means the good or noble-minded worldling. A person who's technically not a noble one, but is a person of good character, who is learned the Dhamma, who has some understanding of the Dhamma, and is undertaken the practice of the Dhamma, intending to reach some level of realization. And so this is a type of person who is, we can't describe this person as an uninstructed worldling. This is a person who is instructed in the teaching, who is practicing the teaching, who has respect and regard for the noble ones. But this person has not yet reached the level of a Seika, of a trainee who's definitely on the path. Okay, now, here the Buddha describes the trainee in terms of a monk, but the trainee doesn't have to be a monk. It could be a layperson or a monk. But he takes a monk as the example. A bhikkhu who is in higher training. It's actually the bhikkhu who is a trainee, a Seika. Then the standard description, whose mind or heart has not yet reached the goal. Maybe a different translation, a pattamanaso. I think in my own translation I used who has not attained his heart's ideal. The heart's ideal would be liberation or enlightenment, and who is still aspiring, still yearning for supreme security from bondage. That's just another term for liberation. Okay, now this person directly knows earth as earth. You all have the charts that I gave out last week, the table. Maybe, Connie, you weren't here last week. Are there still more copies of that chart? No? Then we have to make a copy. No, not now. I mean before. No, not now. I mean before she goes home. Okay, now we presuppose that this person has what did I call it? A basic perception, the primary cognition, which is the simple perception of earth. That's necessarily presupposed. Okay, but now, whereas the uninstructed ordinary person, the worldling, goes on to perceive earth as earth, it's said that the trainee directly knows earth as earth. So what is meant by directly knowing earth as earth? Here the verb is abhijanati. Actually, directly knows isn't such a satisfactory rendering. Abhijanati means to know, and then the prefix abhi gives the sense of superiority in a distinguished way or in a more excellent way. So the trainee knows earth as earth in a special way or in a more distinguished way. And what is this more distinguished way? That is, the trainee has gone through the process of developing insight into the nature of earth or any of these objects of consciousness or of cognition, these bases. And so to know earth as earth, or to know any object of cognition as it is, means to know it from certain perspectives, or to know it from a variety, from particular angles. One of these angles is to know it in terms of its specific characteristic. So to know something by way of its specific characteristic means that through mindful attention to the particular object of awareness, one is able to detect the specific felt or experienced characteristic of that object of awareness. So that instead of just knowing the object conceptually, one is able to experience what is the distinguishing characteristic of that object of awareness. So in the case of the earth element, for example, the distinguishing characteristic would be some degree of hardness or softness. Those are two poles of the earth element, hardness, softness. The water element, you would say the characteristic is, sometimes it's said to be flowing, the sense of flowing, oozing. Or sometimes it's said that the characteristic of the earth element is cohesion, binding together. The characteristic of the fire element is heat. Or you could say it's the degree of heat or coolness. And the characteristic of the wind element or air element is pressure or distension, expansion, contraction. And so these are characteristics that one actually experiences through mindful attention, observation of one's own experience. As mindfulness becomes maintained, sustained continuously, and as one observes one's experience diligently, then one through continued attention, then one starts to observe these characteristics of phenomena. This is the awareness of the elements begins to become manifest. Then the mental phenomena also have their own characteristics, distinct characteristics. Then as one investigates these phenomena, one sees not only their own individual characteristics, but one comes to see how they arise through conditions, how certain conditions come together and these particular phenomena arise. When certain conditions fall apart or disband, then the phenomena that arise through those conditions cease. And so one will see the conditions for these particular phenomena, the specific conditions for each of the elements, the conditions for the mental phenomena. And then as one goes on investigating more deeply, then one sees the three characteristics, what are called the three general characteristics or universal characteristics, that all of these bodily physical phenomena and mental phenomena are all stamped with the three characteristics, that they're all impermanent, all dukkha, in some way connected with suffering or unsatisfactoriness, and they're all non-self, not to be taken as I or mine. And then when this insight into the three characteristics reaches its climax, then there comes the breakthrough to the Four Noble Truths, the realization of the Four Noble Truths. And one then understands these phenomena in terms of the Four Noble Truths. The phenomena itself, its arising, its cessation, and the Noble Eightfold Path as the way to its cessation. So all of these different aspects, or we could say all of these different all of these things that I just explained are different facets or aspects of this superior knowledge, this higher knowledge, which the disciple in training passes through on the way to making that breakthrough in order to become a trainee. Okay, now the Buddha says, having directly known earth as earth, he or she should not, I don't like these words in brackets, he should not conceive earth, he should not conceive in earth, he should not conceive from earth, he should not conceive earth to be mine, he should not conceive in earth. Actually, the original text is stronger. It's actually a negative command. Let him not conceive earth. Let him, let's put it like a direct command. Do not conceive earth. Do not conceive in earth. Do not conceive from earth. Do not conceive earth to be mine. Do not delight in earth. Why is that? So that you may fully understand it, I say. Okay, if you remember when I spoke about conceiving, manjana, I explained that there are 3 types of conceiving. I forgot what they are. Can anybody remind me what are the 3 types of conceiving?
I don't know if I can say it correctly. Is it tanha, mana, and ditthi?
Right. Tanha, mana, and ditthi. That is craving, conceit, and wrong views or speculative views. Okay, now the trainee has completely eliminated one of these 3 types of conceivings. That is the conceiving of views. Because the trainee has arrived at the right view of the Dhamma. He's actually gotten the perfect insight into the nature of the Dhamma. So with the attainment of stream entry, what marks the attainment of stream entry is gaining Dhammacakku. That means the eye of the Dhamma, the eye that sees into the truth of the teaching. And so the trainee, the disciple in training, can no longer take up any of these distorted views. The trainee knows the truth of the Dhamma and gives up all the distorted views. But the trainee still has the tendencies to the other 2 types of conceiving. So the trainee still has the tendency of craving and still has the tendency to conceit. And so the trainee will still tend to conceive in terms of craving and conceit. He might still think, might still have imaginings of different types of sensual pleasures. That's still possible. A stream enterer, once returner, can still enjoy sensual pleasures. A non-returner still has the craving for bhavatanha, the craving for existence. They still have conceit, so they might still have thoughts of comparing themselves with others, thinking I'm better, I'm equal, I'm worse. So they still have those types of ideas, still have these kinds of imaginings. But they know that these thoughts, these kinds of imaginings, these kinds of concepts are deluded concepts. But they sometimes need to be goaded in order to become more heedful in training, in order to eliminate those types of thoughts. And so the Buddha gives them these instructions that they should not conceive earth, should not conceive in earth, should not conceive from earth, should not conceive earth to be mine, should not delight in earth. And why is that? What is the reason? Actually, the Pali is somewhat better than the translation. Parinyayang tassati vadami. Because that should be fully understood by him, I say. Or because that must be fully understood. So in order to fully understand these objects of conceiving, the trainee has to put away these deluded conceivings. And so what lies beyond abhijanati is parijanati. Parijanati also comes from it has the same stem or same base, janati, to know. But the prefix is different, pari, which means full. So this is full knowledge, full understanding. So that is the aim. Okay, then the same thing is repeated for all of the other bases, all the 24 bases of conceiving. Okay, then we come to the section on the Arahant. And we have a standard description of the Arahant. The bhikkhu who is an Arahant with taints destroyed, who has lived the holy life, done what had to be done, laid down the burden, reached his own goal, destroyed the fetter of being, and is completely liberated through final knowledge, directly knows earth as earth, just like the trainee, the Seka, the Arhat has gone through all of those stages of knowledge that the trainee has. Then having directly known earth as earth, he does not conceive earth. He does not conceive in earth. He does not conceive from earth. He does not conceive earth to be mine. He does not delight in earth. So what is the difference now between the trainee and the Arhat? Well, in terms of conceiving.
Doesn't have conceit or craving.
Right. The trainee still has that tendency to conceive, but for the Arhat, the Buddha doesn't have to say, you should not conceive. He just says, as a statement of fact, he does not conceive in any way. Because the Arhat has eliminated craving, and conceit. So they've all come down. So craving, conceit, as well as views, have been eliminated by the Arhat. So the Arhat doesn't have any disposition, any inclination to imagine, to conceive in terms of the ideas I, me, mine. He doesn't weave those myself, or in terms of you, yours, yourself. He can use these concepts and express himself in terms of those concepts as means of communication. But these concepts don't suggest to the Arhat the idea that there is some reality, some kind of substantial reality corresponding to them. He knows that they are just empty concepts, convenient as tools of reference, tools of designation. Okay, and what is the reason why he doesn't conceive anything in this way and he doesn't delight in earth? This doesn't mean that the Arhat doesn't have any pleasure in life. It just means that he doesn't sort of try to find pleasure or take delight with attachment in the earth element. Why is that? The reason is because he has fully understood it. That is, he's reached parinya, parijanati. And what does it mean to have reached parijanati? It means that one has brought all of these knowledges that have been expressed here, one has brought these all to completion, and by doing so, one has eliminated all the defilements, particularly greed or lust, hatred, aversion, and delusion. Okay, and so in order to show from some more angles how the Arhat is free from this conceiving, other reasons why the Arhat is free from conceiving, the text includes 3 additional sections. So besides giving the reason because he has fully understood it, I say, we have a second section on the Arhat in which the reason why the Arhat doesn't conceive, why is that? This is past paragraph 75. Because he is free from lust through the destruction of lust. Well, because he is without lust through the destruction of lust. It's possible to be without lust just temporarily. Somebody who practices samadhi meditation and gains very deep samadhi can be without lust, without hatred, without delusion, temporarily. But they will still have lust, hatred, delusion in the dormant or underlying tendency state within the mind. But here the text wants to emphasize that the Arhat is without lust, without hatred, without delusion, because these defilements have been completely eliminated, completely destroyed. So paragraphs 75, 99, and 123 say, respectively, because he is free from lust through the destruction of lust. So because he's free from the destruction of lust, He doesn't have any conceivings or imaginings of things as being attractive, lovely, pleasurable, that will awaken craving and attachment. Because he's free from hate through the destruction of hatred, he doesn't have any conceivings of things as being repugnant, as being frightening or terrifying, as being repulsive or threatening or as being hostile. And because he's free from delusion through the destruction of delusion, then he doesn't have any conceivings of any deluded ideas like I, mine, myself, and so on. Okay, so this takes care of the section on the Arahant. And finally we come to the section on the Tathagata. This is the Buddha. Okay, now the Buddha is also an Arahant, and so what is said for the Arahant is true for the Buddha, but certain specific qualifications are said in the case of the Buddha. Okay, here first the Buddha is described, let me just get the Pali, here's the Pali text, described as the Tathagata, then as the Arahant, the Sammasambuddha. That's the Tathagata, the accomplished one, the fully enlightened one. He also directly knows earth as earth, and having directly known earth as earth, again, he doesn't conceive earth, does not conceive in earth, and so on. He does not delight in earth. Okay, why is that? Okay, then the reason is given here. The way it comes out, even the PTS edition doesn't have it. But in the Asian editions, Oriental script editions, it comes out for the Tathagata, instead of saying simply in the case of the Arhat, it comes out as parinyatang, but in the case of the Buddha, it comes out parinyatang. Now, if you know South Asian scripts like Devanagari, Sinhala script, Burmese scripts, a copyist can easily duplicate a letter by mistake. And so if you're copying parinyatang and you were to copy that final tongue again, then you would get parinyatang. It seems to me that originally in the case of the Buddha, nothing was intended different from the case of the Arhat. It was simply said, why is that? Because the Tathagata has fully understood it, I say. But some copyist, going back before the age of the commentators, before the age of Buddhaghosa, this commentator in the 5th century, had duplicated that letter to make it parinyatang. And there's another word in Pali, antang, which means end. So you have parinyatang, meaning fully understood, joined with this antang, which means end. So the commentators jump on this and they take it to mean fully understood to the end. And then they see this as a significant difference being stated for the Buddha's full understanding. That the Buddha has not just fully understood it the way the other arhats have, but he has fully understood it with his sabanyuta jnana, his knowledge of omniscience, that he's understood every aspect of the earth element, every aspect of the water element, every aspect of the fire element, and so on. My own supposition is that this is a case where a copyist's mistake, maybe the copyist wanted to extol and glorify the Buddha's knowledge, and so maybe he deliberately duplicated that letter in order to give some reason for glorifying the Buddha's knowledge. And one way that we could understand this is that this has taken place. There are actually 3 versions of this sutta that have come down in Chinese translation through different early Buddha schools, different chains of transmission that came into China. Those versions of the sutta are quite a bit simpler than the Pali version. They have a section in which the Buddha is referring to himself, and they don't have anything that suggests that the Buddha is distinguishing his way of understanding these elements and so on from that of the arhats. Okay, so that's the first section on the Tathagata. Then there's another section on the Tathagata, which now brings in the sequence on dependent origination. Okay, bhikkhus, the Tathagata, the accomplished one, the fully enlightened one, directly knows earth as earth. Having directly known earth as earth, he does not conceive earth, and so on. He does not delight in earth. Why is that? Okay, now we're going to have the chain of dependent origination brought in, but in a compressed form, very concise statement of the chain of dependent origination. In fact, beautifully compressed chain. Beautifully compressed version of the chain. Because he has understood that delight is the root of suffering. Why he does not delight in earth? Because he has understood that delight is the root of suffering. And again, he has understood that with being or with existence as condition, there is birth. If you remember the way we understand existence here, that this is the karmically active side of existence, whereby we accumulate the karma that leads to new birth. And this karma is accumulated due to the craving. And that craving here is suggested by delight. So through delight, one engages in this activity, this karmic activity, which is indicated by the word being. In that being or existence is what brings about birth, in that for whatever has come to be, that is, whatever has come into being through birth, whatever has taken birth, there is aging and death. So here the Buddha is indicating we could call this the danger or the drawback, the misery, the disadvantage in delight. That delight is what sustains this wheel of samsara, what keeps the wheel of samsara moving, eventually culminating in repeated old age and death. And therefore, through the complete destruction, fading away, cessation, giving up and relinquishing of cravings, the Tathagata has awakened to supreme, full enlightenment. Here the Buddha is showing that he is the one who has discovered this whole realization, this whole awakening that uproots the craving that keeps this wheel of samsara going. That he is the one who has discovered this wisdom that can pull up the hidden roots of samsaric becoming. Okay, and then the same thing is repeated for each of all the other bases of conceiving. Then we come to the very end of the sutta. We might just pass over this almost without paying any attention to it, but let's read it. That is what the Blessed One said. But those bhikkhus did not delight in the Blessed One's words. Did not delight in the Blessed One's words. Why is that? Actually, here, in fact, the PTS edition says that those bhikkhus delighted in the word of the Buddha. Apparently the editor didn't consult the commentary, because all the Asian editions say that they did not delight in the Blessed One's words, and the commentary and sub-commentary give explanation why they didn't delight. But I should say my own theory is that, again, that this was somehow an old copyist mistake, or maybe that there was a story circulating that led to a change in the original tradition. Because I checked the 3 versions that have come down in Chinese, and they all say that the bhikkhus delighted in the word of the Buddha. But the Pali version came out with this very strange statement that they did not delight in the word of the Buddha. And now there are a few suttas which show monks not delighting in the word of the Buddha. But when this happens, the statement is much stronger. It says that when the Buddha spoke that sutta, the monks vomited hot blood. Or when the Buddha spoke that sutta, 60 monks disrobed and returned to the household life. So it's very clear that something different took place. But just for a sutta to give a statement like this without any explanation, it would be most peculiar if that was the original text and that the explanation had to come down in the commentary. But I'll tell you what the commentary says as the background story. It says that the Buddha spoke this sutta to a group of, was it 50 or 500? yeah, again, this exaggerated number, 500 Brahmins. There were 500 Brahmins who had gone forth and became monks under the Buddha, and they listened to they had learned all of the Buddha's discourses, which had been in circulation among the monks, and they must have had good memories, the way the Brahmins were trained in memorization. And so once they had memorized all the discourses, and they were trained in grammatical analysis, and so they could analyze the Buddha's words grammatically. And so then they became very proud of themselves, and they didn't go when the Buddha was giving lectures, they didn't go to listen to the Buddha preach, they didn't go to pay homage to him, and they were very self-satisfied. So then the Buddha realized that they were full of conceit, but he also knew that they had the potential to reach arhatship. But in order to help them make further progress, he had to break down their conceit. And so he thought he would preach a discourse to them which they wouldn't be able to understand. And so he called them to his presence and said, "Monks, sit down. I want to preach a discourse to you." And then he preached to them the Mula Pariyaya Sutta. And when they heard it, the commentary says, they couldn't understand it. And then because they couldn't understand it, their pride was offended, and then they didn't delight in the Blessed One's words. And after that, they became repentant for their pride, and then they humbled themselves, and then they went to listen to they apologized to the Buddha, went to hear the Buddha preach, and then at a later time the Buddha gave a discourse to them, and then they gained the final goal. Yeah, that is the explanation in the commentary. Okay, now I'll ask if there's any questions. Yes?
I'm a little bit fuzzy about the distinction between, on the first two levels of the chart, between the disciple and the untaught ordinary person, with respect to perceiving X as X and then directly knows X. And maybe the word direct there is probably, but I wondered if you could speak a little bit more about the distinction between perceiving X as X and then you spoke tonight about directly knowing X, and I think I know what that means to understand it in terms of the four conditions you have on the board. Maybe the perceiving of X as is still.
Yeah, the way the commentary explains this, I think one might understand this in two ways. One is to take perceiving X as X is to accept one's perceptions, let us say at a level of, maybe we call this naive realism, to take objects, to grasp them as being solid, substantial wholes, and to take the naive conceptual framework in which we use to order our world, to take it as disclosing to us the real nature of the world, so that we have a world of solid, substantial objects, a world populated by solid, substantial living beings, ego-centered persons. So that different types of beings, the sutta goes through different types of beings, like beings as beings, devas as devas, the different types of devas as different types of devas. So one perceives them and one just takes them as such. I see John, I just take John as being a person, unified, substantially existent person. I grasp him as a unitary whole. I see the book, I grasp the book as being a self-existent, substantially existent whole. I don't see it as being constituted of a multiplicity of factors, elements, which are conditioned, which are impermanent, which are interrelated, mutually conditioning. Okay, that's one way to see it, that expression. The other way, which is what's stated in the commentary, is that to perceive X as X, this is a perception which already introduces a distortion of perception. And then the commentary brings in the idea of the four distortions of perception or inversions of perception. That is, perceiving what is impermanent as permanent, what is dukkha, bound up with suffering, perceiving it as pleasurable, perceiving what is not a self as a self, and perceiving what is unattractive as beautiful or attractive.
Right, and so I would almost want to say, well, maybe it should be perceived X as non-X, right, to capture the notion of having a false idea.
Well,
I think that's where I got hung up. Right? The X as X, which seems to imply some kind of truth. Right?
Yeah, I understand that, yeah. It seems to imply seeing it as it really is, but that's not the intention. Otherwise, it often, to indicate a true perception, it uses the expression yatha bhuta, seeing it as it really is. But that's not said here. Yes, Peter.
Is there a typo on the handout in the emotive response for the disciple in higher training? Is that supposed to be should not delight in?
Read what it says.
The disciple in higher training.
Yeah.
You have under the emotive response delights in X. I was wondering if that should then.
He should not delight in.
Should not delight.
Oh. Yeah, then that must be it. I probably didn't change it. And you see, the way I did each one, after doing the first one, I cut and pasted, and then I changed. Okay, then I have to also have to change it on the website. Otherwise, everybody out there will get misled.
But he does delight in X, as a matter of fact, right? Part of the problem. He shouldn't.
But he should. It's an injunction. He should not delight in X. Yes, Victor.
The Sekha, when you said he directly knows X, does he do it through the process of investigation and analysis, going through the 4 steps? And the Arahant and the Tathagata directly know it due to liberation and enlightenment, and don't have to go through the steps?
Yeah, the Arahant and the Tathagata have already gone through this. They don't have to repeat it.
But he does, in order to see its true nature and recognize it as directly knows X.
Who is he?
Go through that. The Sekha.
The Sekha has to go through. That is part of the training. Right. The Sekha has to go through the training in this abhinya, in this gaining this higher knowledge. But once the trainee completes that training, when he becomes Arahant, he doesn't have to keep on going through it again.
And because of his, and my pronunciation is going to be terrible,
No.
Tanha and Mana.
Tanha and Mana.
Okay, because of those, he delights in X.
The trainee, or the disciple in training, still has Tanha and Mana, still has craving and conceit. And it's especially through craving that he delights in X. Okay, last question.
I just want to go back to the missing person. What you said is called the Kalyana Pratujana.
Right, yeah. The missing link. Yeah.
Right. I'm assuming that he.
Okay, the question, why is the Kalyana Pratujana, why is the good worldling not mentioned here? I think he's not mentioned. I think he's excluded because of the verb abhijanati. The verb directly knows or knows in the higher way. That verb, sort of in the technical usage of sutta terminology, is reserved for those who have gone through and come through and gained the full knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. Well,
I understand why you're saying he's not included. I'm wondering why the Buddha didn't speak to that category of person. There must have been a lot of people.
I see. I think because when the trainee is mentioned, then it sort of just implies the course that other people should follow. But it's a good question. But
Okay,
I don't know.
It's implied that, I, for example, should be following what he's saying the Seika does, even if I'm not a Seika.
Yeah. So actually this text doesn't really give practical instructions. It doesn't give too many practical instructions. But there are other texts which give practical instructions for a good-minded Pratujana to become a Seika. Different types of instructions, so that's enough, yeah. I think this text is concerned to show the cognitive patterns of these four types of persons. It's not concerned to show the path of practice for changing a worldling into a trainee.
In order to understand the 500 monks that he's speaking to are not Seikas, right?
I take that to be a legend devised by the commentary.
The number aside, the people he's speaking to,
Yeah.
We don't know.
Okay, let's suppose that there are different types of disciples in the audience, but we don't know, yeah. Okay, we have to stop now. Okay, I want to mention, this is the last class for the winter semester, trimester. So I'll come back here for spring semester, March 20th and 27th. Then after that, probably April 24th and May 1st. Then May 22nd, May 29th, then probably June 19th. Then when we come back, what we will take for study will be Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 70, the Kitagiri Sutta. What I'm going to focus on in that sutta is a certain part of it. Yeah, paragraphs number 11 to 21. This gives the classifications of the different types of noble persons. I'll just summarize the background to the sutta, then come into that section, because that's quite an important section.
Sorry, what date's in
April
April, did you say?
24th and May 1st. And then, okay, that's Majjhima Nikaya number 70. And then Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 12. That's the greater discourse on the lion's roar. Yeah, well, especially the sections on the 10 powers of the Tathagata and the 4 kinds of intrepidity, or 4 grounds of self-confidence. Easier word to digest. There's quite a bit to digest in those sections, quite a bit to explain. Okay, so we end now with sharing the merits. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahitika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanang. Akasata chabumata Deva naga mahitika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanang. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahitika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang. Etavata cha ammehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavata cha ammehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe sata anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. I almost forgot the word from a sponsor, from the advertisement. Yeah, if anybody wants to get detailed explanation of the Mulapariyaya Sutta. I don't usually advertise myself, and I'm not advertising myself, but I recommend this little booklet, only about 80-something pages, rather dense. It's just come out in a reprint. I don't even think the copies have yet arrived in the United States. So you can order from Sri Lanka Buddhist Publication Society, or from their American agent, which is pariyatti.com, PARIYATTI.com. It has the commentary, the translation of the commentary with passages from the sub-commentary, which give a lot of sort of more philosophical explanation and illustrations of the different types of conceivings applied to the 24 bases in different ways. I just went over it rather quickly. It's called The Discourse on the Root of Existence, the Mulapariyaya Sutta, and its commentaries.